Documentary Mother Teresa, No Greater Love, which debuted in theaters earlier this month, is coming back to theaters by popular demand. Its two-night debut in October, top of October, generated more than $1.2 million in ticket sales. What was the inspiration behind the film, and why is it doing so well at the box office? Executive producer Jim Wahlberg joins us now to discuss. Jim, thanks for being here. How did this film come about, and how long did it take to produce?
So the film came about by way of the Knights of Columbus and their in-house director-producer, David Naglieri. They wanted to bring this great saint to this new sort of younger generation and to explain to them and to share with them the unbelievable work that Mother Teresa had done, Saint Mother Teresa. I always want to remember when I met her, she was Mother Teresa.
Right.
So I want to make sure to give her due.
Yeah. Well, that's hard. I knew her as Mother Teresa too, and it's kind of hard to slip the saint in there. Ditto for John Paul. But this film was filmed on 5 continents. Access to Mother Teresa's archives, as well as the sisters and the apostolates of the missionaries of charity. Are you surprised the film has done so well with only 2 days in theaters?
I mean, to be honest, I was slightly surprised at the box office results, but I got to tell you, I think people are starved for this kind of. Particularly Catholic folks are starved for things that they can actually go to the movies and see.
Yeah, and have that communal experience. And this was one of Phantom Event's largest Christian, most successful Christian releases of the year, correct?
It was indeed. It was the #1 Catholic film this year, Phantom release.
Now, Jim, you met Mother Teresa in prison. We talked about it a while back when you released your memoir. Remind people how that happened, how you came to meet her, and the impact she had, the lasting imprint on your life.
Well, I was in the process of hustling the Catholic priest that was the chaplain at the prison that I was in, trying to get access to his phone and to his cigarettes and his coffee, and he was trying to lead me back to the foot of the cross. And he gave me a job, and maybe a week or two after I started that job, he came to me and said that we had a very special guest coming to the prison. And I said, "Really, Father, who is that?" And he said, "Mother Teresa is coming to this prison." And I said, "That's incredible, Father. Who's Mother Teresa?" Because I honestly didn't know who she was. I probably didn't know who the president was at that point in my life either, because I was really damaged from drugs and alcohol. But then the day came, and she entered the prison, and for the first time in my life, I experienced what true humility looked like. And for me, there was a certain point in looking at her that I felt like I was looking at the face of God. When Mother Teresa finally did go up onto the altar and speak, she said words that I had never heard before. She said to me specifically that Jesus died for me, and that I was more than the crimes that I had committed, that I was a child of God. And I never heard those words before. So she was completely responsible for me running back to Father Freitas the next day to find out more about the God that she was talking about, not the God that I was raised with, the God of he's going to get you for all the things that you've done wrong.
Now, when you see Mother Teresa, and for those who've been blessed enough to have been in her presence, but even to see her on film, what was that St. Francis line? Preach the gospel, use words if necessary. She really didn't need the words, Jim. She was the living embodiment of that gospel in every gesture, in every movement, in every sigh and touch. I want to give people a taste of the film, Jim. Let me show this. This is Mother Teresa speaking about how she saw people. Watch.
Every person is Christ for me, and that's why, since there is only one Jesus, then that person is only one person for me at that moment. It is that continual contact with Christ in his poor, like we have during Mass. and the Blessed Sacrament.
That's a clip from that old Petrie film about Mother Teresa that is so powerful, and I love how they incorporate that into this new work. It's been 25 years since Mother Teresa died, Jim. An entire generation's grown up without knowing her. What's been the reaction of audiences? What are you hearing, particularly from encountering her mission in this way?
So we did a screening. A friend of mine bought a theater out in our neighborhood, and our faith community came together to see the film together. And a really dear friend of mine and his wife, who are Protestants, came to the movie to support me. And his wife came up to me afterwards and said these words to me. She said, "This movie changed me." I think that when people see sort of the lengths that Mother was willing to go to serve the poorest of the poor and the weakest of the weak and the thrown away, it touches them in a very, very special way. And for me, it's awesome because, you know, here's this woman that sort of appeals to everyone, right, because of the work that she did. And then she was also this great defender of life, you know, and I think it helps to carry that message of life to maybe a group that's not necessarily always open to hearing about that.
Yeah, and it wasn't only the unborn and the poorest of the poor in the gutters of Calcutta. It was prisoners. I remember when I was in New York at the time, Mother Teresa was the only one who opened AIDS houses down in Greenwich Village to care for these men who'd been discarded, again, thrown away. And it was she and Cardinal O'Connor and her sisters who were willing to go and touch and bathe and care for these men at the end of their lives. The film also focuses, Jim, on her relationship with another saint. We mentioned him a moment ago, St. John Paul II. What was that relationship like? How did it affect her and vice versa, do you think?
I mean, think about two great saints that lived in our lifetime. They came together, right? And they had this mutual respect and love. And I think Saint Pope John Paul learned so much from Mother Teresa, and in her sort of serving the poor, the poorest of the poor. He told her to go to the places, go everywhere that they ask you to go to the places that I can't go, carry the message of Jesus to everyone. And I want to just back up 1 second, Raymond, and just talk just about Saint Mother Teresa seeing Jesus in everybody.
Yeah.
Could we learn something from that, right? You know, just each person that was in front of her was the most important person in the world to her in that moment. You know, we're so caught up in cell phones and distractions and news and you name it, politics, and she would take the time, this hugely famous and important person that she was, right? Yeah. She would take that time, that moment to be with you and not to be distracted. You know, I've had the pleasure and sometimes not such a pleasure to meet many, many, you know, famous celebrities, whatever, athletes. And there's always a tendency for them to kind of talk to you and be all over the place at the same time, looking what's going on beyond you.
Right.
And for her to say those words and for her to remind us to be focused on who's in front of you and that this is Jesus in front of you is just such a blessing, and it's such an awakening for me.
The movie also illustrates, Jim, you mentioned it a moment ago, that Mother did not shy away from the truth or her fight for the most vulnerable in society. In her acceptance speech for the Nobel Peace Prize in Norway in 1979, Mother Teresa had this to say to world leaders.
The greatest destroyer of peace today is the cry of the innocent, unborn child. To me, the nations who have legalized abortion, they are the poorest nation. For the child is the greatest gift of God to a family, to a nation, and to the whole world. God bless you.
Jim, how do you think modern audiences react to those words? People seeing that today.
I think sometimes, you know, the words and the message, the messenger matters, right? I think that when somebody, you know, there's many sort of people that disagree with maybe my position on life, have many sort of things to say about, you know, how important it is to me only to save that life, but what else after that, right? And Mother was prepared to go as far as it needed to go to serve and to save, right? And the fact that she was just so courageous, right? It didn't matter who was in the room or who was in front of her when it came to that particular issue. She would tell the truth. And she wouldn't shy away from it. And she had no fear.
Well,
she was a great example for us all.
Well, I love in that clip, Jim, also, you see the radiance. I always tell people when she walked in the room just lit up. You see the radiance when she's talking. That message is given with such love. And you feel the tension all around her because people don't know what to do with that. But she did. She had that, not only the power of conviction, that joy that just spilled out of her, yet she admitted to periods of spiritual darkness while she was serving the poorest of the poor, and the film actually captures and addresses some of that as well. What effect did that have, that spiritual darkness, the dark night of the soul she went through for decades? What did it teach her and us about our relationship with Christ?
Wow. You know, for years, Mother did not feel the presence of God in her life, right? But every day she got up and did his bidding. And every day, each person that she came in contact with was a reflection of Jesus for her. It was Jesus, right? So although she didn't feel his presence, she was in his presence. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. Could you imagine?
No.
Like, I don't feel God's love or presence. I feel he's abandoning me. But still, I get up every day and do his bidding.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a hard path.
I mean, we feel the grace. We feel the grace. We feel his mercy. We see it, right? And she didn't, but every day. And, you know, when you watch the film, you learn that when you traveled with Mother, right, you were up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and you ran all day long, serving as many people as possible during the day.
Yeah, no, she was incredible to watch, and you know, to have seen her in D.C., in New York, all around the world, and watch her in action was, it was a force of nature, but a mission that was boldly carried forward with zeal, and that is something we need to recapture, I think, in the church and in Christianity. What was your reaction, Jim? I want to leave people with this. When you saw the movie the first time, did anything surprise you? Did anything kind of startle you?
I'll be honest with you. I was so emotional, and I think I cried so much. You know, sometimes I think, so I had this personal experience, right? I was in a very dark place with very dark and dangerous people, and the way I look at it is that Jesus sent his #1 assistant on earth for me specifically. That's the way I feel about my encounter with Mother Teresa. And to see other people and to hear their testimonies and their experiences with Mother, it made it, you know, it was always very personal for me. It made it much bigger for me, right? That she had this impact on so many people, and not just the people in the film, but the people that, you know, like the lepers, that nobody would touch, nobody would come near, and she would embrace them and hold them and touch them. And it was a very emotional, and just now I could feel the emotion thinking about the impact on each one of those people that she had, because I know the impact. I felt the impact.
Well, and she followed up. You know, she would not only touch a life, she would continue and follow up. Look, I interviewed her one time, Jim, the first time, and I handed her a letter, a little note. I said, could you pray for this intention? She wrote
Yep.
me back two of the most beautiful letters, and they're months apart. In her, she would
Right.
type them herself or write them by hand. I mean, I still have them at the house. But they were instrumental, really, in just moving me in the direction I needed to move, and knowing that you had that kind of spiritual force behind you, and that tender mother's touch, which she offered not only me, the whole world, you and so many others.
Amen.
I'll give you the final word.
Amen. Yeah, I mean, I think about the day that she came to that prison and the day that she humbly refused to go up on the altar for the entire Mass, but only to go up when it was her time to speak, but instead to choose to stay there with the thrown away and the forgotten men in that prison on her knees. It touched me in such a profound way that, and continues to touch me, right?
Yeah.
All these years later, here I am now involved in a film about her. I'm living such a very different life, and I'm serving God the way I was intended to serve God.
Yeah, well, and her mission continues through you and others like you. So, Jim Wahlberg, thank you for being here. And I want to remind everybody, Mother Teresa, No Greater Love will be back in theaters on November 2nd in the U.S. for one night only. The film will also debut in the UK and Canada on November 2nd and 3rd. Then on the November 7th, U.S. theaters will run a Spanish version of the film. Go to fathomevents.com for a list of theaters and showtimes. Jim, thank you for being here. I could go on for another hour. Thanks, my friend.
Thank you, Raymond. Take care. God bless.
God bless you.